Hi everybody, it's a bit unusual episode of iBookBinding's podcast. We decided at the end of the year invite several of our previous guests and discuss this year, their recent projects, and all the funny things that happened during this pandemic. So yeah, that's it. We have Rita Udina from Barcelona. We have Mark Cockram from London. My co-host Pavel Voronin joins us from Moscow, and we really hope to see Ingeir Djuvik from Norway. But yeah, for now he has some connection troubles. So hi everybody, nice to see you, safe and sound. Hopefully.
Hello everybody.
Hi.
It's a real achievement that we are that.
Yeah. So I guess in the beginning we will give a bit more time to Rita because she needs to leave in 20 minutes already, not 30 minutes, but 20 minutes. But can you just tell us what interesting things happened after we talked last time? We discussed future courses and stuff like that. Maybe you have some news. Maybe you had some interesting stuff.
Well, yeah, many interesting things. Not any workshops presential because of the COVID.
Yeah.
But I have done many lectures and many online things and videos and these things. And well, I have been mostly working. And I have a project now that it's just finished, and it's a really interesting book. This one.
Yeah. Okay.
I will go a bit back. So this book, it's a limb vellum binding, and well, it's not that unusual, no, because it's well, it's like a normal binding.
Yeah.
But it's a manuscript from the 17th century.
Yeah, and it's written in cursive as far as I see. Yeah, so it's
sí. Let me look for the.
What kind of manuscript is it? What's in the 1636? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's a manuscript written by a notary that explains all the historic important events of a town, Terrassa. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing of this book that I had to restore, it is now restored before anyone asks.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing I could see before any treatment, that it's a reused binding, and you can see this because you see that the fold of the joint is sort of separate, so these holes should be beyond.
Yeah, in a different position. Yeah.
Exactly. So because of that, I could see that it's a reused binding, which is not that uncommon. We see this often, no? And when I had to work on the binding, I found inside the covers the original covers that the book had, and I have them here. So it's a pretty curious thing because so these are the covers.
Oh wow.
Inside the book, and you can see the title.
Yeah.
It's a bit a few years before. 1611. One, I cannot say. Sorry, I'm a bit tired. So it's funny because it's a very important manuscript for this town, because it's the manuscript itself. It's really important, and I had never come across this to find the original binding inside the binding. So, it's been an interesting case, and I have been working in many other books, all of them interesting, no? But this one particularly.
Yeah, They decided to reinforce the old cover somehow with the new one.
Yeah, I imagine the old one was broken, and when they were to do the new one, they used it as a layer of the board.
Yeah.
That's
and it somehow reminds me, Mark, of your experiments with books, because this new cover it sort of became this piece of art almost after it was damaged by some bookbinder.
Yeah, exactly. I think the archaeology of the book is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and it's amazing what you can find in books. So yeah, but yeah, it brings a smile to my face when I see something like that. And of course, I think it's important to keep that originality as well. And it's beautiful job.
Yeah. And I understand that you, Mark. Pavel wanted to ask something.
Yeah. I just wanted to know that it's curious. 1636. It was about this time that one of the last waves of the Great Plague came to Europe. So it's very likely that somewhere inside that book there's a note about somebody self-isolating somewhere.
Oh yeah.
So it's timely.
Yeah. So I was not about to leak the book, but yeah.
Yeah, it's good how by the end of the year we can make fun of this pandemic and all the things that happened to us. Finally, Mark, I see you have some Christmas decoration hanging from the ceiling. What other things?
The print rack. No, I had a small for us. Our second lockdown's finished. Yeah. And so I can actually have a single student in the studio at a time. So I'm very fortunate with that. Obviously, wearing masks and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just had a day of. It's one of my sort of long-standing, medium-standing students, and she's working on a project. And for a little bit of levity, I thought, just a little bit of levity, I thought we could do a day of flottage. And so that's just a bit of residue hanging from the print rack. It's a poster I did at the beginning of the plague, as it were. Yeah. I'll just get it. Hang on.
So 1636.
I've got a small proofing press.
Yeah.
And I've got a collection of old blocking plates and printing plates, and I just make them into very simple posters.
Yeah.
And then just to give the student an example of how you can destroy something with flottage, I just dipped it in the flottage tank and came up with that. Again, it looks quite virusy, I suppose. So it's in keeping with everything else. Yeah, it seems to be a theme developing here, doesn't it? Yes. So that was just basically today. So yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, and I really like talking in the end of the year and speaking of all the things that we saw during while recording our podcast and talk to different guests. I really like how it is that every next talk, every next guest adds something to our previous talks and gives additional dimension to what we've been doing, because just the episode that we aired just today or yesterday, I don't remember for sure, was about a hobbyist printmaker, and he showed us some of his prints he made with decorative printing elements, and now Mark shows us something like that, so it all fits perfectly.
Almost as if it's been planned. Yes.
Yeah. By the universe, I guess, or something.
Yes.
So, and how are the regulations in Catalonia now? You still don't have any visitors at your workshop, or how does it work?
Well, the regulations here in Spain change every day, so it's really difficult to know at some point what are we allowed to do or not.
So I guess that's something that that United Kingdom and Spain share in this one.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
And the regulations are different in different regions, because in Catalonia we have some restrictions, and in other areas are different. But yeah, by now we can go to work, but we can't go on weekends. So yeah, it's not that fun. We can go out to go to work, but not for the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Well,
wanted to visit my wife's brother in Berlin. We wanted to rent a car and drive there, not to use any flights or something. But then we found out that in November Germany changed their rules, and now it's previously it was like you can make a test and you go there, and if the test is negative, you can do anything you want. But now it's you go there, you quarantine for 5 days. After that, you have to make a test. You have to wait 2 more days to get the results, and if the test is negative, you can do anything you want. And then you go back to the Netherlands and you have to quarantine for 10 days.
oh,
So
wow.
we canceled our car, and we decided that, yeah, well, okay, we stay at home.
Yeah, it's really difficult to plan anything. So yeah.
Oh, I grew out of that habit. I mean,
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that as well, because yeah, I mean, I don't need that much planning, no, but
Yeah, yeah. But still, here we are. We planned something and made it here. Almost everyone.
yeah.
Well, we need to wait until Ingeir finally connects to our chat. Okay. So, Mark, any interesting projects? Some found objects?
One or two, I suppose. I've been working on a couple of commissions which have been finished, which is good. I'm sort of making plans for next year more than anything else, as we're coming to the close of this year. So I think that it's been an interesting year because having to be more self-reliant, obviously, and doing all those projects that you thought I'll do that later on. Now's the time I found to do them.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I've been working on an artist book where yes, there was found objects, bits of rag used, all sorts of stuff, bits and bobs, which is quite interesting. It's going to be a conservator's nightmare, but I'll be dead by then, so I don't care. And it's going to be I'm just looking forward now to 2021 and sort of getting back to some sense, hopefully, touch wood, of normality. But then one has to question, what is normal?
Have you been wearing any more books? I've been dying to find out.
That's a very personal question. I do actually have one underground as we speak. It's in a friend's. I've got a friend who's a poet, and I've been working with him as well. And it's sort of So anyway, but yes, it's buried. So we'll see what happens after Christmas with it.
I guess you finally need to get your own private cemetery of books or something like that.
That'd be what an interesting topic.
Well,
oh, wow, yes. I mean, yeah.
And the positive one, yeah. So, Ingeir, are you with us this time?
Yeah. Do you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Hello all.
We're all together now. Yep. Yeah.
Nice.
So our third guest is Ingeir Djuvik. He's joining us from Norway. And how is the weather? Is it snowy already?
Not snowy. Here in the southwestern corner of Norway, it's not often we have snow, but tonight we have a cold, windy autumn afternoon.
Yeah.
No snow.
Okay. So did you have any interesting projects during these months since we last talked, besides the one I guess it's too early to talk about?
Yeah, I'm working on 2 books, one for Designer Bookbinders International Competition in 2022, and also planning for Society Bookbinders competition. I guess that will also be in 2022.
Okay, yeah, because everything is shifted now.
Yeah. So for Designer Bookbinders, a book about botanical, botanical book, flowers. Yep. So I can't show it because it's for competition.
Yeah.
Have you been teaching?
Sorry.
Have you been teaching?
Not now. No.
And last time you told us that you will maybe move forward with your plans for your bookbindery and making a separate workshop and moving away from your kitchen setup. Yeah. Are there any news there about that? Inger?
Sorry. Oh, you asked me.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm still working at my kitchen. I have a room at the ground floor that I plan to set up as a bookbinding room when I retire in a little less than 1 year.
Yeah.
I have all the equipment and a lot of tools and all stuff. So just waiting to retire.
So I guess we have to return to you next summer to discuss that.
Yeah. Try that and hope you will be able to visit me then.
Well, hopefully. Yeah. I really hope it will be possible to travel to Norway then. So we have three different guests with absolutely different setups, because when Rita showed us her studio, it's much more spacious than, I guess, what Mark and Inger have. And Mark has this beautiful studio packed with everything and all the things that he acquired among the years. And then there is this utilitarian approach from Inger with using kitchen for his bookbinding. And did you have any additions to your workshop? Anything new? Anything interesting? Any new tools? Something you'd like to talk about, Rita?
Any new tools? No, I have this, that it's not new.
Well, what is it?
It's I don't know the name, but this you do this.
A riveter.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know the name, and you put here a piece.
Yeah.
And when you press like this,
yeah,
it makes a hole on the board.
Hole punch.
A round hole on the board. And I bought it because I found it nice and I use it as a weight. But only recently, after having it for maybe 10 or 15 years, I found the moment to use it. And it was like, oh, because I have a really, really thick board, really strong, that I cannot make a hole regularly. And with this, it was so easy. So it's not a new tool, but it's the first time I used it.
Well, it counts. It definitely counts. And that's why when you see a nice tool, even if you don't know how to use it, you have to buy it.
Absolutely.
well, for a good price, of course.
Sí.
By the way, can I ask, Rita, do you need a tool that make different sizes of holes?
Well, as Stefan suggested, when I see tools, even if I don't see the imminent use of them, I always think that maybe one day I need it. So for this case, it took like 15 years that the need appeared. But yeah, I had to bind really an oversized book. It was an album with plans. So the book was almost 1 meter, really big. And I made, so it was stitched, not sewn. And I put like a cord. Mm-hmm. So I needed to have sort of big holes on the board and round and nice. So that's why.
Wait a moment. I will find something that might be of interest for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I also have, I have a similar tool. I guess I don't know, me'n recordo aquí. I have this, but this, which I guess many of you have, was not enough.
Yeah.
It was the board was like concrete, really hard.
This one.
Yeah,
Oh.
no.
All right.
Perfect timing.
Now I was so happy I can help you.
Now, I have this one, and this was not. Because I wasn't strong enough. I mean, the board was so hard that there was no way for me to and this distance was not big enough.
Oh, okay. See.
So that's why.
I think in comparison, I'm very primitive when it comes to making holes. I've got a selection of hole punches, and I just hit them with a piece of wood. That seems to do the job for me.
Bueno, because you are good at it, but I rarely do that. So
I don't know if I'm good at it, I can assure you.
So you don't need hole punchers, Mark.
Oh, I do.
You do?
You can't beat a good hole. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I've managed to acquire some newish tools.
Yeah. Okay. How old are they? These huge tools?
I think it's very rude to ask how old a tool is. I don't know. Well, they're new to me, but they're old to everybody else. Let's just see what I got. So a little while ago, a student, after I hinted it was my birthday, gave me a little giant, which is one of these little hand planers.
Yeah.
I was about to ask you about that, Mark.
Well, I'm now. Here I am. Now's your chance. And so with this, I find it absolutely super duper for doing leather. It really is, and there's no pressure required. You can alter the height of the blade very easily, and there's none of this sharpening and 30 degrees, 60 degrees. You just put a new blade in.
And by this you mean this type of tool, or this version of this type of tool?
Well, this tool is
okay.
Fantastic. And so I was showing one of my students how to use it, another student, and she said, "Oh, this is fantastic." And I said, "Yes, it is, isn't it?" And then she said,
I have this one, which is pretty similar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, and so she said, "Where'd you get them?" I said, "It's very difficult to get. Very difficult to get." And she said, "It's all right. My father is retired. He has very little to do. I will ask him to get some." So I said, "That'll be a good idea." So, literally a couple of weeks ago, I got
Aladdin's cave.
3 more. This one's slightly different because it's got a big knob thing on it there. But they're all little giants. The colour's not important, but they all do the same thing. So I've got four of them. The problem is, of course, I've only got 2 hands. See, now that's the drawback. But
you have your feet.
At the moment, my feet are encased in Doc Martens, and I can assure you, the Doc Marten is not the most sensitive of footwear. And it's, look at that, I thought, yes. So I can now give workshops and demonstrations in leather pairing with the little giant. Now that's what I call a plan for the future.
Well, yeah, that's definitely for 2021 to have 3 students at once.
Yeah,
what a nonsense!
Yeah. Okay, guys, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to leave.
Yeah,
it was a real pleasure to meet you all, and I'm sorry that I cannot stay longer.
Yeah, it was great to see you. Yeah,
lovely to see you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
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 Hope to see you later.
This is like turning into Tool Corner, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I ask you, Mark? Do you use the little giant for back tooling?
For back pairing.
Back pairing.
I use. It depends on the leather I'm using. and how fine I want to be. I'll either use, I suppose, mostly I'd use my Sharfix to do that. But again, depending on the sensitivity, also, you know, I'd use my paring knife.
I also use Sharfix, but it has a little bit too small a gap. If you
I would tend to agree with you. Whereas with the little giant, you know, you can use it as, I know people are going on, oh, I use a spoke shave.
Yeah, I think I need.
I could never use a spoke shave. It's just too heavy. You're pushing away from yourself. You can't manipulate it. The blade gets blunt so quickly, and you think, oh dear, oh dear. These I find so much easier than a spoke shave, and for smaller jobs and all sorts of things, they're fantastic. And the stuff you can do with this that you can't do with the Sharfix. So it really is. And it's also, it's cheaper than a Sharfix.
Exactly. Well, I have a Sharfix, but I think I imagine that when you place the ladder on a little stone and use the little giant, it'll work very well.
Oh yeah, I've got no problems with it. I don't use a stone. I use sheets of toughened glass.
Okay.
Because they're easier to store and they're cheaper than like those stones.
Thank you, Mark.
You
don't like to spend money as far as I see, Mark. this is strange development.
Being a bookbinder, I don't earn a lot of money. So the two go hand in hand, I think you'll find.
As one of our guests told us, the best way to make a small fortune in bookbinding is to start with a big one.
Yes, exactly.
Well, yes. he was talking about printing, but yeah, it works.
I think it goes through all arts and crafts.
Yeah, it translates perfectly. Yeah, I found a similar tool earlier this year when there still were flea markets in the Netherlands, and I bought it for a couple of euros, and it was exactly this moment. I saw the tool and I wasn't sure why and when would I use it,
don't wait 15 years. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I guess I need to do some leather binding finally.
Yes.
Haven't been doing making books for quite some time now, and
the fingers get rusty.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I guess I first need to get an employee who will do more stuff for the shop, and then I maybe finally will have some free time to make some books.
Yeah. Oh dear.
And Inge, what about you and your tools? I remember you talking a lot about your tools and how you like even to make them and collect them. Have there been any new ones?
Not really. I guess I think I have everything I need. I ordered some more beautiful papers from Shepherds in London yesterday, but and some beautiful leathers from Harmattan.
Yeah.
So that's what's new. By the way, Mark.
Yes.
Can I ask you? Did you have a student named Kari?
Yes, she's moved back home.
Kari Tveite?
Yes.
Yes, she's Norwegian. Yes, she talked about you. Yeah.
Yeah, she's moved back home. After she came over for a year and stayed for 30, as is the way. And I've many years, and she's a very fine artist and a pretty good bookbinder as well. I have to say, I like what she does, and her presence will be sorely missed. But don't tell her that.
We'll tell no one.
But yes, no, it's good. I mean, and again, she's an extraordinarily creative person anyway. So I wish her well.
I thought you to say, yeah. She's a Facebook friend of mine. Yes.
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah. Cool. Good stuff. Yeah. No, she's a lovely person, and I don't want to inflate her ego too much. So.
Yeah, it's nice to hear. Nice to
Well,
hear.
this is small world once again.
Yes, frighteningly so.
I also wanted to ask Mark about Booker Prize bindings. I think you had your experience with making bindings for the Booker Prize in the previous years. Am I right?
Yes, yeah, I've done about 10, I think,
Okay.
something like that. Yeah, the Booker is a very special event. It really is, and it's a pleasure doing it because you're working with living artists, living writers. It's not like, rebinding Shakespeare.
Who cares about Shakespeare?
Nothing.
Yeah.
And the chance to actually sit down next to them at the awards, literally you're sitting next to them, is a great honour. But you've got to come up with the goods because they've obviously written the novel, the book, and they know it intimately, and you've put a design binding on it.
Mm-hmm.
And they can, unlike a dead author, which can't actually say, "What have you done?" They sometimes do say, "What have you done?" And
so you had this experience.
And unfortunately, I haven't. No, everybody's gone, "Oh yeah, I see where you're coming from," or that sort of thing. And then, you have a chat with them about the work and everything, and it's lovely. Yeah, it's a great experience, and the binders alternate sort of every year or year and a half, 2 years, or whatever it is, and it's fellows of Designer Bookbinders that do it, and you're under an awful lot of pressure. You've got only 4 weeks or thereabouts to do it, and you've got to do it. You're under contract. You can't sort of say, "Oh, can I hand it in next week?" Because the award ceremony will not wait for the bookbinder.
Mm.
Well,
that's it.
This is absolutely wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I've told them many times, but am I listened to? No. And so you've really got to come up with the goods, and it's got to be good because the images get flashed all over the place. You're on television. If you do see me on television, I'm always following the camera around, just going, always trying to get in shot, and the whole atmosphere is great, and there's a real buzz to it as well. This year, obviously, is slightly different with everything being either online or televised or whatever. And I'm looking forward to it getting back to normal, because though the coverage and everything was fantastic, actually physically being there, it really is an event. And I like to think of it as when I'm doing it, as one of the highlights of my year. So yeah, it's and you get free food and the champagne. So there are plus points.
And what about the books themselves? Do they always go to the authors? Because
yeah, it's part of their prize. So if you're on the short list, everybody is sort of a winner. To get onto the short list, you've got to be good. It's as simple and straightforward as that. And all the people, they're called finalists, and all the finalists, they get a financial reward, which I'm and they get a individually bound copy of their book, which now is, before it used to be the standard pages that you would buy in the shop or text block. But now
that's what I wanted to ask. Is it standard pages or it's a special edition?
It used to be, and we were fortunate because you would get 3 sets of pages from the publisher, and so you could start work on 2 bindings. And because you're working at speed and you don't have the time to consider steps and everything else, not that it's happened to me, but you can make mistakes. It happens, especially if you're working at speed. And so you would start working, or I used to start work on 2 books and work on them parallel. And then as time got nearer, just concentrate on one, but I always had the other one as a standby.
Mm-hmm.
now it's specially printed on very, very posh paper, and it's all this, that, and the other, but we only get one copy. And so that's just cranked up the pressure even more, because every time you go near it, says that's the only one in the world, the only one. So it's like looking at the manuscript book we were looking at earlier. No, that's the only one there is, and that becomes a very precious artifact. It is a very precious artifact on a number of different levels. But with now with the Booker, it's just, you just think, oh no, oh no, oh no. So that's it. That's the business of bookbinding.
It's interesting how how what you just said works along with what Rachel Wardsale told us when we interviewed her, that she considers design binding to be a single copy work, and but if you're working on 2 copies of the book, it's a bit a different approach, I guess, or something.
Well, it's basically, that was my insurance. Just in case, because you've always got at the back of your mind, what happens if. And another thing that probably isn't known is that each one of the people who's doing a book of binding, they have a second. So quite often I'm a second when I'm not the principal binder. And one year I was Lester Capon's second, and I got a phone call from him saying, "Hi, Mark." I went, "Hi, how's it going?" He said, "Could you do a little bit of teaching for me?" I went, "Yeah, why?" Well, he said, "I've chopped the tip of my finger off, and it's slowing the work down slightly on the Booker. Could you sort of, instead of me having to travel to London and do some teaching, then can you just do that?" And I went, "Yeah, of course, yeah, no problem." The thing is, he still hasn't paid me for the teaching. And that was over 10 years ago.
Well,
imagine the interest on that.
There is, but I think he's lost interest in it. So but yeah, so yeah, I mean, the Booker, it's a great thing, and as it's towards the end of the year, it really keeps the momentum going. So and we only know which books we're going to be binding on the day that the shortlist comes out. So we're glued to the various medium and all the rest of it. So it's very exciting, and it's good fun. If I do it next time, what I'll do is I'll post, as I do every year anyway, I post stuff online, progress so far and things like that.
To me, it sounds rather scary to have so short time to bind a book. And
it's not just binding the book. It's actually, you've got to read the thing as well.
Exactly.
Because your design has got to come from it, and you can't just put something abstract on it and then say to the author, "What do you mean you can't tell what it is?" You've got to be there, because you start a conversation with the author and you say, "On page 56 you mentioned something or other, and that was a key point in the design," and they say, "Oh yes," and then you're saying, "This is this and this is this," and you can't BS your way through things. You've got to be very, very active about it. You've got to really know the subject. So it's difficult. And another thing as well, if I may say this, whatever you do, don't, if the book has been made into a film, don't watch the film and think that's the book.
Exactly.
Sometimes mistakes have been made like that, and you're thinking, "Oh dear, that's wrong."
A long time ago, since I watched the film based on a book, because I was always disappointed.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. Yeah, but yes. So one learns from other people's mistakes.
Yeah. Well, I'm an amateur, so I often, mostly need a lot of time to develop the design. Sometimes it comes quickly, but sometimes it takes a long time to develop.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean the gestation period for the work that I do for my own personal work can commission work and things can take months, quite seriously. And one book I was working on during lockdown, was an artist's book that's part of a series of 20th century icons, and it was about Picasso. Now that's a very difficult subject in its own right, and so you know it's finding links and finding ways of being able to work with an iconic artist, and you know sort of an unknown collaboration, as it were. That was very, very difficult, and it took me 3 months to actually formulate where I was going with it. The actual making of it, in comparison, it only took me about a month to make. It wasn't that long, but it's that, you know, and fortunately the collector is a very nice person, and he understands, and he's you know, extraordinarily understanding. Whereas a recent commission I've just finished, actually, the idea came, and the design theme and everything else, and the construction and the architectural form came within about 2 weeks. And then there was about 4 weeks working out the construction and how I would do it. And then the actual making was only 3 weeks. So in comparison, that's less than half the time. So it's very, sometimes things can happen quickly, sometimes things don't happen quickly. And sometimes you have too much information, which clouds everything. And sometimes you don't have enough information, which leaves you scraping at the surface, trying to find out more, to get more of an in-depth view. So yeah, I mean, that's why the booker is scary. You don't have that luxury of time.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so, yeah.
And I guess you are also working on a book for Designer Bookbinders International Competition.
I can't say.
I do, and I made one, and I was not. It was not good at all. So we started on another one, and I think that some topics are more difficult than others.
Yeah.
For example, flowers, botanical. There are so extremely much to choose.
Yeah, it's a very interesting theme for the competition, and it depends how you take it and the way your mind goes. The only, not problem, but one can always see that the judges may not see where you're going, or where you know, the journey that you've taken to get where it is. And so they're looking at the artifacts, they're looking at the finished piece, and they may not understand it. And also during any judge, I've been a judge on a few competitions, and also you have limited time. You know, you can't spend, you know, a morning looking at one book and trying to understand it, and look and thinking, and the balance of it and everything else. You have to have sometimes you have to be very, very quick. And there was one competition I did a while ago. I was a judge, and all the judges, you know, you're ticking the boxes and you're going through, and we came up with a winner. And then I said, yeah, okay, that's, you know, that book's really good, really good. It would be the one you would take home to meet the parents. But which one would you take to bed? And everybody went, well, that one over there. And I said, yeah, same here. That's the problem. So, you know, take to bed to read. That's what I mean, by the way. And it can be a real problem. And though I enjoy judging, again, it's not easy. You've got to be, you know, it's a different set of rules and everything else. So, which is one of the reasons why I don't enter competitions, because it can be difficult. And also my students are entering, and it would be unfair of me as a teacher to enter the same competition, because I should be concentrating on theirs, and their work, and not on mine. So, and plus you've got if one doesn't enter, you have a clearer overview, and your view isn't clouded. So yeah, that's another thing as well. So I think I may have told you my position as far as the DB competition is concerned, just in that last sentence.
Yeah, we got you. So, Ingeir, you showed us some of your bindings during our talk, and there were bindings that were based on the same book, and they had similar designs, but still you prefer to change some small details with every next work. So I guess is it your approach to never make the same copy of the binding, or how does it work for you?
I don't know really. Once again, what you said, what you mean?
You showed us some of your bindings that are based on the same book, but still the designs have some small details different. And you change some things, so for example, these 3 books that you made for your children, as far as I remember, they all had a small different design. So you can see that's the same style and the same theme, but still every binding had its own design.
Oh yes, of course. I try to do that. As with the binding with for my kids and for the birds, the bindings for birds. So I always make different designs for every book. That's what it is when you do design binding.
And how it is with you, Mark? When you've been making 2 copies, were they the same copies or they were different?
Yeah, they were slightly different, but that's the nature of the work. I mean, for example, I'm working on again during lockdown. I was working on a commission where I filmed sort of back pairing and stuff like that on it. And when the book eventually got to the recipient liked it so much that sort of commissioned me to do 2 more. And I said, that's great, but each book will be different. There'll be the theme, but they will be different. So it'll be a variable on it. They said, great, yeah, lovely. So I don't necessarily work, making exact copy. When you're working with books and you're working by hand, it's very, very difficult to get them exactly the same, because there's always going to be the human quality of the human as it were. But doing a set of encyclopedias with 5 rows of bands, bit of gold tooling, and it's all and every book marvel, that's a skill in itself, etc. But that's not where I come from. And I think for the work that I do, I'd like people to be able to feel that they have something that is unique. And I think that's been, and to be honest, it doesn't take a lot of effort to make things unique, even if you are following a theme, different colorways, different positions of the tooling, still using the same tools, still using the same techniques. But then again, one could say that there are a number of bookbinders around who that's all they do. They have one style and they vary it with color different position for an onlay or a bit of scrunching up or something, and that's it. I like to tackle each book independently and individually. If it means working in a different construction style, then I'll do it. I don't stick with just one theme, as it were, because I think that's not where I'm coming from. But I think we discussed this in episode 1, as it were.
So, could you talk a bit about how you design a book, by which I mean the process? Because Richard Watt-Sale showed us her design notes, and they were fascinating because she works on the technique, she works on the drawing, she uses lots and lots of drawings, then she prints. And
I think I work in a relatively similar-ish way, in that having an art school background, you do tend to work things out. I've got numerous sketchbooks knocking around with designs and things. So stuff is constantly whirring around in the head. And I don't necessarily, and that's another thing with designer bookbinders, is that when you go for your licentship or your fellowship, people like to be able to see your working process. So you know, we work. I know it's a very old school, but we work, you know, making notes, doing drawings, visualizing our thoughts to think, you know, if I attach the board in this way, is it going to work? So there is a lot of background and proprietary work. I also work on maquettes as well. So for example, for one of the recent bindings, I actually made a maquette board, which is actually bigger than the size I was working on, to see whether or not the size, the thickness of the board would work, and to visually and physically work the design out on the board as well. So if you like, this is sort of like the artist's sketch or cartoon of the finished painting. And so, you know, to check that the opening and closing mechanism will work, that it will do what it's meant to do, that it's, you know, solid. So again, I'll be working on a maquette. Now I'd leave this as it has been left in the studio, just to see what warping there is and all that sort of thing, because this is one of the things about being a bookbinder, being a book artist. It's not like being a canvas artist where you're working on the one surface and that surface is stretched, and for the majority of artists, you know, they layer the paint on and that sort of thing. With us, we've got the mechanics of the book, the engineering of the book. We've got all these different aspects coming together, and we've got this multiple surfaced medium. And because we're applying materials to natural boards that moves with the application of adhesives, pull of the materials and everything else, you have to have a very fine balance between the two. So again, that I worked that out as well, you know, how many layerings there is, all these things. So I always I think of bookbinding and book arts as the alchemy of bookbinding, because you are bringing together all these things to make something else. And so I think of it as a series of processes and steps, and trial and practice and seeing what it is, which is why, you know, books do take 2, 3, 4 months to make, because you've really got to understand, especially when you're, I'm not saying pushing the envelope, but when you're working in a progressive way, you've got to make sure that what you're doing actually works. You know, you can't just bang it out and say, oh yeah, I meant all the boards to warp out. That's a design feature.
That's not a bug, it's a feature.
That's not what it's about. Yeah, you've got that one wrong, because the box doesn't close now.
I mean, it worked for Leonardo da Vinci. Why not for you?
Well, I couldn't possibly say that at all. But I'm sure Leonardo would agree with you.
Ingeir has somebody special over there.
I didn't.
Yeah.
My assistant.
Well, yes, that's the way to get likes.
I fully agree with you, Mark. And about the binders making the same things over and over. I've been a teacher at the design college for 29 years. And I've said over and over again to my students, kill your darlings.
Yes.
Yeah. Try to do something very different from what you like to do.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It is a double-edged sword, though. Again, it's something we touched on in a previous episode, is that when people are struggling, they're working, and all of a sudden they find a style. People start getting interested in buying. Again, you know, we have bills to pay, etc., etc., etc. And it's very easy to fall into the trap of not being progressive and doing the same thing because it pays bill. And there's also the argument that you then have a recognizable style. So collectors say, oh yeah, I haven't got one of those from that binder, I need that for my collection.
Yeah, exactly.
So there is that side of it. I understand it. I really, really do. But I can't think of anything more boring than going into an exhibition or viewing an exhibition online and immediately looking at the book and say, oh yeah, so-and-so's done that. That's by so-and-so. That's by so-and-so. That's by so-and-so. It's almost as if you're looking at it thinking, oh, isn't there anything new? And
exactly.
it's but by doing different things all the time, it is very difficult, because you don't necessarily, I mean, there are you can't help but have touches that are recognizable of things that you do. You can't help that. But you've got to, I feel you've got to keep moving forward, because if you don't, as I say, you know, time keeps moving and you're stuck here, you're going to all of a sudden become very, 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 very old and dated. And I think that it is very difficult, I know, and it's one of those things. But that's my opinion. But again, you know, it takes quite a brave collector to collect, or people who want to own institutions or whatever, who say, yeah, we're going to go out on a limb, we're going to buy new stuff. You know, it's one of those things. But that's my opinion.
That reminds me a bit about what we discussed with our first guest of this season of our podcast, Kalin Daskalov Stopan from Bulgaria, and he's using all this almost traditional Bulgarian ornaments in his design bindings, or in his bindings, and but then they're not so very traditional, and there is no real tradition of bookbinding ornaments, of book ornaments in Bulgaria now. So he has to reinvent everything like that, and so it's, in a way, it's traditional, in a way it's innovative, and this makes it so unique and absolutely beautiful. And
yeah, I think it's, if you combine and you start looking outside and you start looking at different elements. I mean, you know, it's some of my work, I do use very traditional ways of working, but in a contemporary way. And it's also about, you know, looking at different cultures and seeing how they tackle things. And again, different artists and different artisans, how they work with the same materials, and drawing inspiration from them, manipulating the subject. But this is one of the beauties, is if you can work making the text block as well, then you have the full creative sphere to work in. And it means that you can really explore and go forward with it, because you're working within the totality, the wholeness of the book. And working with existing books is great, and you can read into things and everything else. But you are limited sometimes. By breaking those limits, it does allow you to go forward. But again, you're treading into the unknown. And it's like we were looking at the manuscript book earlier. That's a beautiful thing, and that's a treasured thing, and that's a single book. That's it. If you're making a single artist book in less than 100 years' time, that's going to become a very rare and precious thing, because it is the only one in the world. It's not like Charles Dickens, for example, where there's multiple editions, multiple copies. And I think for me, that's it's a very strong direction that I see myself going into and developing more. Still keeping, you know, 1 foot in what I call traditional design binding, but, you know, getting out more, doing stuff. So that's how I see myself going. I've just probably shot myself in the foot now, but there you go.
This manuscript Rita Udina showed us, it is sort of my favorite type of a book, because there are many similar books written by notaries in different towns and cities of Spain and other countries. But then there is something that makes it special and tells its own story that is so unique. And when I find something in a book, in an old book, that tells me its own story in some special way, or story of what's its author, or story of its owners, previous owners, it makes it so more special for me. And that's why I look for old books. One of the reasons I do that.
Yes, yeah. I think there is. But I mean, I have a small collection of older books, and I think that, you know, you find stuff in them all the time. You know, handwritten notes, and again, the marginalia can be wonderful. You know, one of my favorite books, which I've got knocking around somewhere or other, Yeah, it's an old school edition of Romeo and Juliet, and it's plays, and it's got multiple sort of notes and marginalia and acting cues and movement cues written in it by numerous people who use that book. You can imagine all these school kids year after year after year after year using it, and I've always wanted to do something with it because I think it's worthless. It's nothing. But the beauty of it is that it's been used and it's been brought forward, and I think stuff like that, it's to be cherished. It really is. So yeah, I'm just waiting for another Shakespeare competition, and I'll use that one.
Yeah, and I also think that the binders growing up or something, or the way the binder lived, or what he or she experienced will be transformed into the binding some way. As you said, as for me, I grew up in the countryside in Norway, and I guess it will be can be seen in my bindings, and binders growing up in London or other places, it will show their bindings in some or other way.
Yeah. I suppose in that respect, I'm relatively lucky. For a many number of years, I did live in the countryside. So, but I'm now based in a city. So yes, fortunately, I had the best of both. So I'm quite fortunate in that way. Yeah, it's strange in this country. People's idea of when they retire is to move to the countryside, and they find it such a shock. They really do. The nearest shop is miles away, and it's noisy, and there's mud on the road from the tractors. And what's that sound? And that's a wild fox eating your cat, and and all of it. And they go, oh, so it's quite funny, people's reactions sometimes. So, but living in a city, I'm underneath a flight path. So for me, that's part of urban living, is this background of noise happening all the time. So yeah, I'm used to both sides of it.
It really depends on the city as well, because while we lived in Moscow, we lived on a Soroway. Is it Soroway? Yeah, Soroway. Yeah. And it was like cars were driving by day and night, and it was never silent. Even while we had windows to the inner side of the courtyard, still we had all this noise. And when we first moved to the Netherlands, and we finally rented the apartment in Leiden, and it's in the center of Leiden. It's in the very center of the city. So the point where the city started 900 years ago is like 50 meters from us. So it's like living on a red square in Moscow. And in the first night, it was hard to sleep for me because it was so silent. There was no noises at all. So my first thought was to say that it's like in the forest, but then it's not, because in the forest you have this
there's
constant
always
sound.
Noise.
It's more like it is in mountains, where there is much less sound.
It's post-apocalyptic. There's nobody else. Nothing.
Yeah. So I wanted to, speaking about mountains, I wanted to ask something, Ingeir, once again. I know that, and you showed us that you have your process of designing includes computer designing. And you told us earlier that you had to scrap one of the books you were making this year for the competition. And is it often that something happens between the step of computer design and implementation in leather that you find that it doesn't work? So it works on a computer screen, and then you're starting to make it in leather, and it doesn't work completely. Or it may be a, I don't know, calculation error or something. You have one additional millimeter somewhere, and it's just everything is broken. So where the mistakes are?
The big mistake I made with the book I mentioned was that I did not make good sketches enough. I did not made much more too much designing. I was too proud. I think, okay, I'll start here now. Everything will go okay, and we'll fix this underway. And then karma hit me, because yeah,
So
really,
you've been cocky.
yeah, yeah, because no, it didn't work. Exactly, it didn't work. It ended up in a disaster because I didn't design it too well to start with.
Yeah, I wanted to ask this because errors are so very important in our creative and working process, and without errors, often you cannot progress. As Mark spoke quite a lot during this talk, you need to progress,
Sorry.
and errors help us to progress quite often. So, what's
of course, the finished binding will never look exactly like the design. There will always be a little move things a little bit apart, and sometimes I experienced that if something went very wrong, I had to go to plan B, and sometimes it ended up even better than plan A, because I had to really think about it and adjust the plans. Sometimes the failures can yeah, be good.
So hopefully the second attempt will work for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's it. That's an important thing. I think also, when you're working on a design, you're working on it flat on a piece of paper, or notebook, or on the screen, to when you're actually working on it as a 3D sculpture. Let's say a book does have a sculptural quality about it. That transfer from the 2-dimensional to the 3-dimensional, all of a sudden you're seeing it as it really is. And you think that one element that really works well in your design, you actually do it on the book, you're thinking that just isn't working. And I agree with Ingeir, you've got to have a degree of flex in what you're doing. And you've got to have a degree of humility as well, and saying, I've got this wrong. I need to have another go at this, which again is why I work on maquette boards. I physically make, quite often I'll physically make, a maquette of the book that I'm working on. And again, it's what I encourage my students to do. So if they make an error or a change of direction, a change of design, they can work it out on the maquette first and then go on to the real thing. So again, they're working in tandem with this. And I think this is one of the reasons why learning the skill, the art, the craft of making the book is not a short course. It's not, something you can do in a weekend and then come out of it with your little certificate. Oh, I'm a bookbinder. It takes quite seriously years and years and years and years. And I feel that I'm still not there yet, because I know I've still got so much to learn. And sometimes you're learning from people how not to do things. So I watch, and I've got time for everybody. If I'm watching a demonstration, I think, yeah, I can see this is going to go wrong, and I think it goes wrong. And sometimes it's very joy and happiness in seeing how people get out of those problems as well, and the thought process of correcting it or the change of direction. One of my tutors, she used to make deliberate mistakes, and then she'd say, right, if this happens, this is how you get out of it. And we thought it was all part of the lesson plan. It wasn't. Well, there were actually mistakes. So there you go. Yeah. So, but it was very interesting, and and another thing as well is not to get panicky and too precious about yourself. The important thing is the book, not you. The book is going to be around, hopefully, far longer than the binder.
You know, like in the old mechanical sets, they used to include mistakes into the instruction sets, so that you have to think. You don't just reproduce and follow the steps.
Yeah, I remember hearing something about that a long time ago. I think it was from my grandfather. Or something like that.
Actually, Soviet knockoffs that were around when I was a kid had the same feature, but I don't think it was deliberate.
Yeah, I think they just copied everything as it was.
Yeah. But I think that's one thing. I mean, there's a very famous and very well-known manual on bookbinding, and that was our sort of Bible when I was at college, anyway. And there was one mistake in it which actually hadn't been corrected, and it was to do with a measurement or how to measure something. And the tutor said, right, following these instructions, your homework is to make this book following these instructions. And I think I've mentioned this before, but everybody turned up with the book, and I turned up the following morning without a book, and the tutor said, why haven't you made it, Mark? I said, well, the instructions are wrong. I couldn't make it following the instructions, and everybody else was looking rather sheepishly at their work, going, you know, well, I didn't. And the tutor said, yes, well, you're the only person who's got it right then, Mark. You couldn't physically make the book correctly from those instructions. So it is one of those things, and I think again, there's the happen chance, the serendipity of the making, which can really, you know, take us places. And I obviously one doesn't want to fail or have mistakes and things, but so much can be learnt from them. But I think it's a question of not being too serious about yourself when you're working. You know, stuff does go wrong.
This example of stolen designs and things that were produced by Soviets after being introduced by some other country reminded me of a story my grandfather told me once. So he was designing and developing. He was the chief of a lab that was developing satellite networks for our military. And they were copying some American system at some moment, and it was a mobile unit or something, and it had a strange hole in one of the walls, and they didn't know why this hole appeared there and what was the use of it. But they decided to make a perfect copy, as it often was with Soviet technology. And a couple of years later, a fuse blown in this system. And they couldn't remove it until they decided to use a lever through this hole in the wall and just poke it out.
That's probably what the Americans did, to be quite honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Drill the hole in the wall, so we get in there, get in.
Yeah. I guess the original design didn't have the hole, but by the moment Soviets stole it, it already was upgraded.
Very cool.
I assume to leave you, but I would like to say a little thing. When working with arts, you will never be educated. I used to say to my students, if you think you finished your education, you're not educated, but you're finished.
Yeah.
Understand?
No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah, I mean, it's something that I've adhered to. It's like, you know, taking the steps in Designer Bookbinders, being a licentiate and then being a fellow. You know, people say, oh, cool, you're a fellow now. And you go, yeah, okay, yeah, I've got there, but there's still so much up there that I've still got to do.
Yeah.
And I always think every day is a fresh day and a new start. And what was yesterday was yesterday. So, yeah.
I wanted to ask you about taking time not to learn a technique, but to learn a style, to learn a culture, especially when it's not your culture. When you mentioned that you take inspirations from other cultures, and it can be a dangerous path. You could be accused of appropriation.
Yeah. Yeah,
And you could
yeah.
actually be guilty of it.
I guess
Yeah,
I guess we first need to let Inger leave us, because I understand he needs to go. Am I right?
I'm sorry, I have to leave you.
Yeah.
Very nice to that you would include me again, Stefan.
Yeah. It
And,
was a pleasure
nice
to see you.
And nice to meet you, Mark.
But likewise, a real pleasure.
And Pavel. Hope to see you again.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
for sure.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, I think that you have to be very careful, obviously, and you can't do a straight rip-off, as it were, because by doing that, you're not learning anything. What I try and do is I try and find out about, if I'm learning a decorative technique, for example, try and find out as much about it as possible, where it fits in with a different culture, why it's done, and if, for example, it's done for a religious reason, for example, a particular motif is something that's very precious or something, then obviously you have to be extraordinarily careful how you use it. And again, you can use that as an inspiration, as a starting point, and then move on from it. But I think that if you just limit yourself to what you know, then you're going to dry up. And I think it's extraordinarily important. I mean, one thing in point about this, there was a competition a few years ago, and one person had done a design on the boards, on the cover of the book, and it featured a church, and it was an Orthodox Christian church. Now, I know that the cross is different. You've got other bits on it. This person didn't put the other bit on it. And I thought,
this is strange.
That's interesting, because if somebody looked at that, they'd say that's not correct. That's a bit bad, sort of thing. And so tiny little details sometimes are very, very important. And it's also about, we always use different cultures, not always, but we always use a different culture to a sense of aesthetic or something. I mean, you just have to look at chinoiserie or Japonism, and how Japonism influenced the Impressionists. You look at the posters of Toulouse-Lautrec, and you can see direct links almost with the woodcuts that were being imported from Japan at the time. So there is always going to be influences, always, and it depends how you use those influences. A classic example of the 20th century would be Andy Warhol. How he appropriated tins of soup, comics. Liechtenstein as well did that. And it's about, the artist saying, well, I'm using that as my inspiration. This is my starting point, as it were. But again, you could say that in years gone by, art students would go to the art galleries and copy the masters to learn about, sort of positioning and proportion and all these other things. So it is a very difficult thing. And nowadays, obviously, with the internet, we have access to so many different things that you can't help but be influenced by so many different things. But again, it's about respect, it's about caring, it's about understanding. It's also about, again, being honest with yourself, I think, if that all makes sense.
And I think it's also about seeing yourself, parts of yourself in others. Simon Schama, talking about this particular moment you just mentioned, about Japanese influences on Impressionists, he notes that it was first about what Japanese put into their prints that got the attention, because it was a modern way of life. It was countryside colliding with the city. It was actors. It was everything Paris knew, but in an exotic setting. So it was an instant connection, and it is very important to see in other cultures not exoticism but commonalities. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, we're all human. We all have the basic functions. We may go to a different part of the building or wherever to do them, but we all do them. And so when you break it down to quite a low level, yes, we're all the same. We all have to eat. what utensils we eat with, and what we eat may be slightly different, but we all eat. Again, it's, you know, what is exotic to one person is everyday to the next person. You know, so again, it's about this balance. And, you know, we can travel the world now sitting down on the internet. You know, there are live cameras in cities, and you can watch cars go by hour after hour after hour, and that sort of thing. So, you know, you can be, it's not physically immersive, but you can be immersed in a culture without actually being there. And the problem is with that is you're not getting the sense of what it is, and you only can see what you're allowed to see, to hear, and that sort of thing, without actually saying, actually, what is around that corner? And that's the journey. I mean, you know, with I like Southeast Asia an awful lot. I'm fortunate to go there, you know, lectures and exhibitions and stuff. And you know, that for me is exotic. Even now, after 30 years, I still get quite excited about it, because it is different. And of course, you know, the same is for people coming from Southeast Asia to the UK or Europe. You know, they, you know, they're, oh, look at that, isn't that wonderful, and this, that, and the other. And it's the same. We all have the same emotions. We all see things with, you know, using these. And again, it's what is our normality makes everything else seem special and exotic. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about being progressive, looking forward, going forward all the time.
This reminded me of my feelings about visiting different regions of Europe, because of course, when you go to, for example, to South Asia, the differences may be more striking. But then when you are traveling through Russia, many things are very similar, but there are differences between different regions, of course. And between
yes.
some of the regions, the difference may be even more striking than between Russia and, for example, I mean, central Russia, like around Moscow, and some places in Europe. But then coming from the largest country in the world to live in Europe and traveling through Netherlands, I can see that in a region that has same population as Moscow, there are so many different smaller cultures and beautiful traditions and different languages, and this is such a European thing. And it's or going to Spain, for example, where there is Basque country, there is Catalonia, there are all other parts of Spain which are absolutely different, and people think and act differently. And this is beautiful and interesting, and it's interesting when it influences you and somebody's art.
You very much so, and especially if you're coming in as I hate using the word outsider, but if you're coming in and you are not from that culture, you see things so differently. I remember the first time I went to India and getting out of the aeroplane, and the smell was completely different. You know, the different fruits on trees, different everything, and you just thinking, this is new. This is something exciting. And so that again was. That was there were lots of different smells actually.
That's like in a sci-fi. In many books, you find the same trope that every planet smells differently, but then you do not need to go to a different planet to feel that, because you just need to go to India, or I don't know, to Arkhangelsk in winter, and you will feel absolutely different smells, and then minus 35 centigrade will also help you to find the difference.
I'm sure that would help. Yes. Yeah, I'm thinking it's cold here, but that's nothing compared to quite. I think that's one of the beauties, and I think if you've got an open perspective, an open mind, and you're able to take on board stuff and give it time to gestate, to develop, then it will come out and it will enable you to do things. And it's about looking at different structures of books, you know, why they work, how they work, can they be modified to work with different materials, with different aspects and different things. And again, that's all adds to the palette of creativity. It gives us the opportunity to do things. So yeah.
Have you experimented with the Asian formats of books, like a palm leaf manuscript?
Yes, yeah, very much so. Yeah, I mean, again, there are so many different variations, but between Korean and Chinese and Japanese and Vietnamese, etc., etc. There are so many different variations, and it can be subtleties like down to the measurements used, the paper sizes.
I was impressed when I read that some Korean and Chinese step bindings differ in that they have different number of holes. In one country it's even, and in the other country it's odd. So
exactly.
It is amazing.
Yeah, it's subtleties like that which can and often do. I mean, it's when everybody says, "Oh, it's a Japanese binding," and you think, "No, it is not a Japanese binding."
Yeah.
And you get so angry about it, and they say, "Oh, well, my teacher said so." And I said, "Okay, right, fine. If your teacher said so, it must be right, but find out for yourself." So again, it's this recent commission, London Scenes. I used a Yamato Toji style binding, which is but with a variant where the spine goes around. The Yamato Toji is quite a unique-ish binding in that it can be both hard and soft binding, and it's a very versatile binding structure, and it works obviously beautifully well with the softer papers, the longer fiber papers, and not necessarily European or hard fiber, stiffer paper. And so again, yes, it's about understanding how you can cherry pick from different areas and again bring together to make something quite unique, because the Yamato Toji is a very structural, very architectural style of work in the hard binding variant. So yeah, it can work. It's one of those things that understanding how it works and how you can make it work for you in the way that you work takes it forward. That's one of the fun aspects of the job. Yeah, that's what I like, getting out there. But yes, palm leaves. Again, it's understanding why those structures were developed in the first place, and the history of it, where it came from. All these other things I think are very important. It's about understanding what you're working with, learning the rules of it, again, so that you can then break the rules and make new ones if you like. So yeah, again, it's about being flexible. Yeah, and learning to live with making mistakes.
Speaking of palm leaf books, we have a planned episode for our smaller podcast, for our bookish talk where Pavel wanted to talk about birch bark manuscripts found in Novgorod region here between Moscow and St. Petersburg, and the oldest is it the oldest Russian handwritten book, or the wax book containing of several wax tablets.
Wax tablets, yeah.
Yeah.
And those birchbark manuscripts, they are something like Vindolanda tablets, but from the Middle Ages. And the difference is those London tablets, Vindolanda tablets, you can barely read them, even if you know Latin. The shapes are weird. It's impossible to connect to them. Whereas with these documents, the connection is instant. It's like Jews often talk about the strange feeling they get when they come to the Museum of the Book and see the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they can read them, like every word of it. And here it is the same. You read words written 800 years ago, 900 years ago, and you can see what the joke was.
Yes. I mean, this is one of the remarkable things about the materials that people did use, the longevity of them. I mean, we have similar things from the Romano-British period, 2,000 years old, and
from the Hadrian's Wall.
yeah. And you can still, if you read Latin, you can still read them. That please send socks. It's very cold here.
Yeah, exactly.
That sort of that's a literal one apparently. So yeah, I mean the materials we use and we have used in the past are it's mind-boggling. It really is. It's a fascinating subject. Again, referring back to the archaeology of the book, it really is the archaeology of the book. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Well, I guess we will finish now.
Okay, like most parties, I'm the last to arrive. Last to leave, I should say.
We will leave you to have your weekend and without us.
More than welcome anytime.
Yeah,
sorry.
We really hope to see you next year once again, and
sure, no problem at all. It's been great.
I'm sure we will find a lot of things to talk about and to discuss.
I look forward to it. It's been great. Thanks both of you so much, and thank you for doing what you're doing. I think it's very important, and
it's so much fun.
Great. Yeah, exactly. And from the comfort of your own chair.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it. Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll be glad to see some of your comments below this video. Many thanks to our patrons on Patreon. Thanks to your pledges, we are able to pay for editing of these podcasts, and this is a great help to our project. Please consider joining the crowd. Pledges start with only $1, €1, or £1, depending on the region where you are living. And on the screen, you will see some of our patrons who pledged $3 or more. Thank you very much to all of our guests who already left us. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mark, for staying with us until the end. Many thanks.
End.
Yeah. Many thanks to my great co-host Pavel. See you next time. See you next year. Hopefully it will be a better year.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.